everyone, and welcome to our new show, Cultural Big Bang. I'm Stacy Spivey. Now, why is this called Cultural Big Bang? That's because here in America, we represent so many different cultures in so many different countries from around the world. Even here on ASU's campus, you can see so many of these countries represented. And so we are here to inform you about all these different cultures and to show you things that they do over in their home. And later in the show, we're going to speak with some Chinese students, professors, and even some Americans that have been to China to experience their culture. And then later, we're going to have Americans come on, and they're going to try on some Chinese clothes and try out some Chinese martial arts. But first, we're going to start off with talking with the Chinese Student Organization President, Winnie Li. Hey, Winnie. So thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for inviting me to this show. Hello, everyone.
So what made you come to America?
America is the most developed country in the world, and they have very good education system, so I choose to come here.
Okay. So what's your major over here?
My major is mathematics, and I changed my major several times because I want to find some major I interested in, like from international business to the economics, and to the electronic engineering. Then finally I found the mathematics, what I like.
So what made you like mathematics most? What's your favorite part about it?
Algebra.
Algebra?
Yeah.
I don't think I like algebra. I'm just not a math person.
It's a logical stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what was your opinion of America before you came here? Did you have any stereotypes?
No. My opinion about American, think I watched a lot of big film like The Dark Knight, like Spider-Man. I saw all the cities like Manhattan and Chicago,
Yes.
like Las Vegas. But when I came here, what a small village here.
There's not a big city around here, is
Yeah.
there? So it was kind of a shock to see that all these fields were around here and
Yeah.
none of the tall buildings like you see in the movies.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion now that you're here about America?
Here, think still have the big city, and but all around with those small city. But in Arkansas, the Walmart is from Arkansas, so Arkansas made a lot of like achievements for American. I don't still, even Jonesboro is a small town. Even sometimes make me just boring, But I still feel it's a good place to study.
Mm-hmm.
It's quiet, not so many people, so it's good for my study.
Okay, so do you like studying here? Like, what's your favorite part about being here so far?
Traveling. I like to travel to big cities.
Yes. Where have you traveled to?
I've been to New York City, Chicago, Orlando, Houston, Dallas. Yeah.
Did you like it there?
Mm-hmm.
Better than Jonesboro?
Well, it's a small place. It's not so many people around.
Yes.
I prefer here.
You prefer here?
Yeah, I guess to get used to here.
Okay. So, what is your favorite part about the Chinese culture?
My favorite part is like language. I think the Chinese language, even we speak the Mandarin to understand each other, but we still have the 8 different local language. Even like nowadays distance people, if they speak local language, they don't understand each other, even they don't speak Mandarin. That's, I think, the most interesting part for the Chinese culture.
So it's kind of like here we have the North and the South.
Yeah.
It sounds completely different, even though we're speaking the same thing. Okay. Well, what are some misunderstandings you think about Chinese culture?
Well, like Chinese culture, we have the history for 5,000 years, but our country is just like 62 years old. We set up 1949. We're still young, so we trust our government. Even we only have one government, it's very different from American. We have one government. American have 2 party to control the country. So I am still believe my government can handle those things.
Okay. Well, what do you think is the biggest difference between, the United States and China?
Think values. because as you know, U.S. society is made up like a diversity of ethnic groups. They have different values, they shape their cultures, and also people's attitudes and behavior are based on their values. So I think even in China, people, for example, in the education, our value is to get a good score, then go to a good university. If you go to a very good university, you can get a good job. But in American, you study what do you like. I can change my major several times in China.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, tell me about your most memorable experience since you've been here in the United States. I mean, maybe was it eating the food for the first time or just seeing the clothing on campus? What do you think is the most memorable?
First time was the football game.
The football game?
Yeah, the Red Wolf.
The Red Wolf football game. What did you think about it?
Before I came here, I don't understand football. I thought football was soccer. So it's now, different. Yeah, it's different. I can study how to watch it and how to score, how to defend, how to offense. I watched on the TV and asked some American friends about the football. Now I'm excited about football.
So I'll see you in the student section on Saturday?
Yeah,
or
sure.
tomorrow? The game's tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay, well that's so exciting. I'm glad you like football. It's definitely a big part of American culture.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is it like to introduce yourself to students here, American students?
Well, for me, I like introduce what I'm not the people. Well, some Chinese people say me I'm very cool and don't talk too much, but I want to introduce to my American friends. I still talk too much when I get familiar with those people.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on our show, Winnie. And it was so nice to meet you and hear about Chinese culture and about your experiences here. And we'll be right back after this break. Hi everyone, I'm with Anthony Holmes, and he's a graduate student here at Arkansas State University and actually visited China a few years ago.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Great.
So tell me about your experience in China.
Well, about a year ago, I had a chance to go with some traditional college students to Beijing, China. And we flew in. The biggest thing was the flight. Oh gosh, it was 18 hours.
Did you sleep on it?
Well, it was hard to sleep because it was day, then it was night, then it was day again while you're flying. And we was watching movies, but once you watch all the movies, it's like, But we ate like 5-6 times, so it was really cool. So we left at night and got there back at night. Funny story, when I got there, my wife called me in my hotel room. She said, "You were supposed to call me. I hadn't heard from you in 2 days." I was like, "I just been gone 1 day." So you lose, it's like 2 days past. But Beijing, the first time I got there, the biggest culture shock was just expecting to see everybody on TV. Everybody was dressing like real fashionable. I didn't really expect that, but it was like cutting edge of fashion. So it was really cool. The people were really nice. The food there doesn't taste like Chinese American food at all.
It doesn't?
No,
What's it like?
Gosh. I think it's curry they use. It's something that's a little more spicier, but not hot. And then everybody eats. Like when you sit down, everybody sits at this table, and you don't just order what you want. Everybody collectively orders something. So this wooden table spins around. Everybody gets a portion. So it's more about the camaraderie. It's more about the fellowship. But I tell you, you can't get ice in your pot though. No ice.
No ice?
Yeah, we ordered ice, and they said there's ice. It's like, "Could we have ice?" They go, he want ice. They look like ice. And they bought this little bitty little thing of ice, like maybe big as a cup, in a cup. Yeah, so, but they don't drink, in China, they don't drink hardly anything cold at all. Even in the hot summertime, they drink hot tea. Yeah, so that was a shock.
That food was a culture shock.
Yeah, but it was good. Some people who went with me, like they didn't like the Peking duck, but I loved it. Some students, excuse me, who went literally almost starved because they would not eat for 2 days to finally, when we went to McDonald's, and then they ate. And McDonald's is
I've heard it's different. Is it
oh,
different there?
It's good. It's really
good?
They fry the fries in a different oil, and the cheese is more of a milky cheese. And they deliver in China. They deliver.
McDonald's delivers.
Yeah, they got guys with backpacks walking around like, I'm not gonna mock. They're like ordering, and the guys are putting the food in the thing, and they get on their bikes or whatever and delivering McDonald's.
I wish they had that here. I would call up McDonald's. Hey, can you bring me some food?
I'm telling you, a Big Mac. Now Kentucky Fried, like they have Kentucky Fried Chicken and they have Pizza Hut, but at Pizza Hut it's like, hello, there'll be tables for two. It's like
going to 501 here.
Yeah. In China, that blew me away. And the malls, oh my God, they're just like huge. And you would go in there, you would think you were in New York or something because they got like every sport, all the sporting clothes we wear, they're there. All that stuff's there. Even wines and the spirits, they're there. One of the things that was the biggest shock, I think, was you would think with the advancement of people digital downloading, they still sell a lot of CDs and a lot of DVDs. Oh yeah, they got a lot of pop artists who are popular there, just as popular. Who's popular now? I don't want to say Britney Spears. Who's ever popular now? Justin Bieber. Yeah, it's real big over there. So it was a big shock. It was a culture shock. Yeah.
What was your favorite part about being there?
Can I be honest?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Having people walk up to me who have never seen a black man before.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because we went to Tiananmen Square, we went to the Great Wall of China, and went to a couple of other places. So people from the countryside make a trek there once a year or once in their lifetime. So those who live in the countryside, really the only black people they've seen is on TV. So they would walk up to me and can I take a picture? I was like, sure. And they would. One little guy, I was walking on the palace, as Imperial Palace, seriously. And you can't be claustrophobic because people are around you all the time. So we were all trying to get around the palace, and a young guy walked up to me, and I brushed against him, and he grabbed his skin and rubbed because he thought my blackness had rubbed off on him. So, and then I had a bunch of little Chinese girls run up to me. I thought I was Godzilla or something. They was like, look, black man. It was like that. So that was pretty cool. No, I think the greatest thing was trying to climb the Great Wall.
I've always wanted to do that.
It's
Is it as spectacular as people make it out to be?
I think the stories of it is more spectacular because when you think about how it was handcrafted, and you think, oh, I'm athletic, and I think you used to be a cheerleader or play baseball, and you're trying to struggle to get to it, and hear these little 80-year-old women who come all the time, and they walking past you, and you go, and you're just going up it, and this has all these different posts you go up, and there was this is just great. This is one real quick story. See, back when the emperor was building it, you had to work in. There was no choice. So they come get all the men in the villages. They would come and get all the men in villages to work on the wall, and you worked till you died. And when you were through, when you died, they just put you in the wall. And that was kind of sad. But there was a story of this woman who, at her wedding day, the emperor's soldiers came through, and they right before she was about to not consummate the marriage, they was about to finish the vows. They snatched him and took him to work on the wall. So she was crying, she was laminating, she was going all the way through the village crying for her new groom. She never consummated the marriage, or she never got a chance to be with him. So this general heard about her story, and he went looking for her, and he fell in love with her. So she said, if I get the story right, she said, I'll marry you if you do 3 things. She said, if you find my husband's body and give him a great funeral. He said, I'll do anything for you. And he said, and when we get married, I want a big parade, and I want us to get on a boat and go past my village when we get married to show everybody that I've arrived, right? So he did all that, and guess what she did? Once they did the funeral for her husband and buried him, and they had the parade, and then on their honeymoon, they was about to go back on this big ship. She jumped off the ship in front of her whole village and killed herself.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was one of the story of the human spirit that was told about the Great Wall. that was one of the highlights of my trip.
Besides the Great Wall, what else did you notice that was just this, really impacting thing on Chinese culture when you're over there?
That we have preconceived notions that I think that a lot of time, when it comes to fashion, that we just automatically think we're the trendsetters, and that's not true. There's a lot of things that are setting in China that we follow. We tend to think that they're behind, but that's not true at all. Everybody, all the young people dress nice. They're really more westernized than we can ever think.
So what do you think is the biggest difference in our fashion here and their fashion there? Is there a big difference, or are they just kind of ahead of us?
I think they're ahead of us. I think they're willing to mix and match and grab from different cultures. We want to just see one person who we think it sets the trend, and we become carbon copies. But I didn't see a lot of carbon copies. I saw people with their own flavor and their own style. That's what I saw.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about your experience in China. And we will be right back.
The State Parks of Arkansas. 52 parks. 4 beautiful seasons to experience them. Sponsored by this station, the Arkansas Broadcasters Association, and your Arkansas State Parks, making beautiful memories.
Welcome back. I'm Stacy Spivey, and I'm here with the Associate Dean of College of Education, Dr. Greg Meeks. Welcome onto this show.
Good to be here.
Okay, so tell me about your experience living in Taiwan for 20 years.
I went when I was 28 years old. I was married, and my wife and I, we went to Taiwan, and my responsibility was, of course, first 2 years I was in language school and learned to speak Mandarin Chinese, and then I was kindergarten through 8th grade principal of a school in Taipei, and then the last 10 years of my time in Taiwan, I was the superintendent over 3 schools there on the island in the 3 major cities of the country.
So what brought you to Taiwan? What made you go there?
We were actually appointed with the Southern Baptist International Mission Board. We went as educational missionaries, and with the intent of being responsible for the administration of the Christian school there.
What impressed you most about Taiwan?
I think a couple things. One, of course, is just the people and their openness and warmness. They really like foreigners, and especially Americans. Taiwan has an excellent relationship with the United States, so that was a very positive thing. And just the scenery, especially when you get in the mountains, some very beautiful scenery and pristine forest and mountain ranges. Very, very beautiful.
So you really liked living there?
Yes.
What was the most memorable experience while you were there?
Most memorable experience, it's hard to put your finger on just one thing, but I think, just being in Chinese people's home, and I remember one time specifically is a very memorable experience because it was Chinese New Year, and we'd been invited to a friend's home, and they have a Chinese feast to celebrate Chinese New Year. My wife was pregnant, and we actually had to leave the celebration early to go to the hospital for the birth of my son. He was born on Chinese New Year, so that was
awesome.
quite an adventure.
Well, what do you think is the biggest difference in living in America and then living in Taiwan? I mean, you got to experience even the hospital side of it.
Mm-hmm. Actually, one of the big difference is the term convenience comes to mind, and it plays both ways. In living in Taipei, for example, it was very convenient. I could just walk outside my door, and right outside our gate was a grocery store. I could go to 2 movie theaters. I could go to hundreds of different restaurants just within a couple blocks of the house. So that convenience. But in terms of the United States, there's convenience too in terms of American products that you're used to, convenience of a home that has central air and heat. Some of those things are the things that comfort things that we're accustomed to, is some of those convenient things that I appreciate about the United States.
So was that the biggest culture shock for you, or something else happened?
I didn't experience a lot of culture shock. I adjusted, I felt like, fairly well. My wife, on the other hand, had a much more difficult time. When we first went, I was 28, my wife was 26, and when we first went, one of the things that kind of surprised, my first impression getting off the airplane and walking out into the terminal, my thought was, there's a lot of Chinese people here, and of course they were almost all Chinese, but coming from the Midwest and not seeing very many Chinese people in my lifetime, it was quite a shock just walking off that airplane and realizing there's a lot of Chinese here. But some of the things when we first went to Taiwan, they were still under martial law, and driving from the airport into the city, driving up to the toll booth on the freeway, the interstate, there was guards at each station with M16s. So that was kind of a shock, and thinking, where have I come to? But the Taiwan people are very peaceful people.
Well, explain the relationship that you think that Taiwan and the United States has.
The relationship between the U.S. and Taiwan, U.S. Is committed to their autonomy as it exists today, and at one point we actually had diplomatic relationship with Taiwan, but that changed, and our diplomatic relationship is now with China, mainland China, and Taiwan is considered a province of China, but even in spite of that there's no longer a diplomatic relationship with Taiwan, there's still good strong relationship, and there's some support when China was doing some military exercises and shooting some missiles over Taiwan. The United States put a aircraft carrier in the strait, Taiwan Strait, to show their support for Taiwan. So there has been that type of support to try to keep everything in a peaceful manner between Taiwan and China.
So do you see yourself going back and living there again, or are you thinking that you want to stay here instead?
Actually, we hadn't planned on coming back, but because of parents' health, needed to come back. Of course, we've both, my wife and I and children, have both been back. We've all been back at some point or another. Whether we would go back and live again, it's hard to say given our circumstances, but definitely not out of the question.
Okay, so since you were both in high position there and here in the educational programs, what do you think is the biggest difference between educational programs in Taiwan and in the States?
Of course, the education system in Taiwan, there's a lot of pressure from parents to perform. One of the big difference is just in terms of the language in learning to write, and learning those characters. You know, we're used to an alphabet of 26. They have over 10,000 characters. So it's easier, I think, for American education systems to focus on creativity, whereas a Chinese system, there's just that ingrained need and necessity to focus on memorization, just the sheer volume of memorization in terms of those facts. So I think one of the big differences in the educational systems is, and I think it's changing somewhat, but focusing on memorization as opposed to working on trying to develop higher order thinking skills and creativity.
Would you say that that language barrier was quite difficult to overcome?
Just the sheer difference between the two languages is quite a barrier. It was probably after a year where I've really started to of hearing complete sentences and being able to respond in that manner on a deeper level. We studied 4 hours a day, and it wasn't in a class. It was one-on-one, so you couldn't hide in the back of the class. You definitely had to be engaged in the instructions. It was very intense, and I'm glad I had that experience. I wouldn't want to go through it again, but I'm definitely thankful for that opportunity.
Was there anything else you'd like to tell us about your experience in Taiwan?
Taiwan people are great people. They're warm. They like making friends. They like to practice their English and speak English with you. They very helpful. Go out of their way to accommodate and just make great friends, and just good people with a great heritage.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's very nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Thank
And we'll
you.
be right back.
The blue planet. Almost 75% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. Water, the source of all life on Earth. And a whole lot of fun in your Arkansas state parks. So what are you waiting for? Boat, float, swim, ski, fish. Visit lakeandriverstateparks.com to plan your fun. Sponsored by this station, the Arkansas Broadcasters Association, and your Arkansas State Parks. Making fun memories.
Welcome back. I'm Stacy Spivey, and I'm here with the Associate Professor of Radio Television, Dr. Lily Zhang. Yes. So nice to have you on the show, and thank you for coming to talk to us about your experience here in the United States. So what actually brought you over here?
To Arkansas State?
Yes.
I got my PhD in Mass Communication and Media Arts from Southern Illinois University Carbondale, and when I was about to finish my degree, I started looking for jobs because I wanted to teach in a mass communication program in the United States, and apparently the job brought me here.
Okay. So the first time that you came over here, what brought you over here? Was it education?
To the United States?
Yes.
Yeah, I came here with an intention to get a PhD degree in mass communication and hopefully return to China to teach, because at that time, when I came in 2000, there was no PhD in mass communication in China. So I was hoping that with this advanced degree, a terminal degree in this field, I could help with the mass communication discipline in China. Apparently things change a lot. Mass communication has been a very popular program in China in the last decade. So if you go to any major Chinese university, you will see they have a PhD program pretty much, which is slightly different from what we have in the United States. So I decided to stay here and enjoy doing research, enjoy working with young American students mostly, and working with my American colleagues.
So what would you say is the biggest difference in students in China and students here in the States?
If you're talking about students back in China and the typical students we have here in the United States in the typical U.S. program, major differences. We have very different cultures. Back in China, we have more top-down model, meaning that when an instructor enters the classroom, he or she is the leader there, okay? She's the boss, and she has the authority there. So pretty much students are, they listen with very few questions, with very few challenges, and they'll take the order. But by and by, I'm seeing more of that with our students as well, especially in the graduate program, because we've started to attract a lot of international students, many of them representing an Asian or Eastern culture background.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that so many more international students are drawn here?
I think the major reason is an international recruiting effort that was initiated at the university level. I believe the previous provost at ASU, Dr. Dan Howard, played a major role in recruiting international students. And of course, there are some other reasons why many international students picked Arkansas State.
Why is that?
One of the reasons is the relatively affordable cost of living and tuition and fees.
And I think that ASU does a great job with their international students, you know, keeping them involved and welcoming them on campus.
We're doing better.
Yes, I think it's awesome, and we do have a lot of international students here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you came over, what was the biggest culture shock for you?
For me personally, arriving in the United States, for the first time, the biggest culture shock was the lack of mobility, because I can't drive. I couldn't drive at that time. So, you know, coming from a major Chinese city, metropolitan area in the south, where public transportation is very widely available and more densely populated location. So everything is within easy reach. And when I got here in the United States, I landed in a typical university town in the Midwest, in the rural, with farmland around, you know, cornfield, and yeah, you don't get to see many people, first of all, walking. And I remember I landed in that dorm building in the afternoon. One of my professors delivered me there. He was so nice that he housed me for a couple of days until I found a place to live. And when I landed in my dorm room, I went out to look for things for supper, and apparently there was nothing. And I didn't have a car, and I couldn't drive, so I was basically there by myself thinking about, you know, how on earth I'm going to handle this. And of course, I was fortunate to have other Chinese students who came out to help me, and you know, they fed me, which I'm still grateful. So that was the biggest shock I personally experienced. And of course, later on, when we started classes in a couple of weeks, you know, the whole classroom setting. I remember that I didn't keep the syllabus, my first syllabus, because I didn't know. In the Chinese education environment, we typically are not given a syllabus by the instructor.
Here.
Yes, and now when I when I have international students, where sometimes have freshman students, I typically tell them, this is our contract, so please store it in a safe place. And I always want to make sure that I have an electronic copy for them to back up. I have it here in case you misplace yours. Here's a copy, okay? Please refer to it, because I had that personal lesson. I remember when the first quiz came out, we just arrived in the classroom and we were supposed to have a quiz, and I didn't know about it because I didn't know that I was supposed to read that and prepare for that. I didn't do bad, but I could have done better.
Yes.
Fortunately, it was just a quiz, and I soon learned my lesson and managed to do pretty well.
So what has impressed you most about being here?
In what role?
In the education.
In the education, I was really impressed by how my professors approached research, how they treated students. And I mentioned earlier, my professor basically drove 2 hours to pick me up from the airport, and they housed me for a couple of days. And I didn't have a car in the first year, and when the weather was bad, and we had, even in classes, my professors would just deliver us one by one after the class is over. And of course, that's the nice part. Many Chinese professors are nice too back in China, but it's a different approach, And also, when it comes to work, they're totally different people, They are tough. I remember one of my professors who was from India, when the deadline came up for submitting a term paper, she basically had her secretary taking down the exact minute when your work is submitted. And that's how strict she is. And it's not a bad thing. I learned a lesson, not because I did something bad, but I learned that this is how we should do things in our field, and I'm transferring that to my students, and hopefully they're benefiting from it as well.
So how has working here really impacted your life?
I really don't think it's changed my life in that way, but it has come naturally, I would think, with some education here in the system, and just smoothly moving into a similar setting, and everything just came to be natural. I gradually realized that it was probably the kind of lifestyle I liked. And of course, that's another cultural shock, because again, coming from a metropolitan area, living in the cornfield is a totally different thing. But I found that I've started to like it, and being a common person, I guess, being an average individual, trying all your best rather than trying to compare you with somebody else, because doing your own best is the most important thing. That's what I learned in this culture, and I really enjoy that.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We are glad that you got to come on and talk to us. And right after the break, you'll get to see some American students finally adventure some Chinese culture. We'll be right back.